This is you, standing in the middle of a screaming nuclear control room, your eyes locked onto a wall of flashing red warning lights, while every alarm in the building howls like the plant itself is begging for mercy. Your hands are shaking over the emergency panel. The floor beneath your boots trembles with a deep, mechanical vibration. Behind layers of concrete, steel, pipes, valves, and radiation shielding, the reactor you have watched for years is slowly slipping out of human control. Looking at this scene, anyone would assume you are the plant director, a decorated nuclear physicist, or some legendary disaster specialist flown in by the government to save the day. But the truth is far less impressive. You are absolutely none of those things. You are just a tired, underpaid night shift control room operator, a forgotten worker in a faded uniform, surviving on vending machine coffee, cheap instant noodles, and the miserable hope that your 12-hour shift will end without anyone remembering your name. So how does a nobody like you become the last human barrier between a dying reactor and an entire sleeping city? Let us uncover this terrifying shift. For 8 long years, you have worked inside the same aging nuclear power plant on the edge of a quiet industrial town. To the public, the facility is a symbol of clean energy, national progress, and perfect engineering. Politicians visit the front gate once a year wearing polished helmets and fake smiles. Executives give speeches about safety culture. School children are shown glossy animations of happy atoms spinning peacefully inside blue cartoon reactors. But you know the truth. Behind the visitor center, behind the security fences, behind the polished corporate videos, the plant is not some shining miracle of modern science. It is an old, exhausted beast, a maze of sweating pipes, humming turbines, flickering fluorescent lights, rusted stairways, concrete corridors, sealed doors, and control panels so outdated that some of the buttons are older than the young engineers pretending to supervise you. Every night, while the important people sleep, you sit inside the control room and watch the numbers: coolant temperature, steam pressure, reactor output, pump status, radiation monitors, backup feedwater lines, control rod positions. To anyone else, they are just boring numbers on a screen, but to you, they are the heartbeat of the plant. And after 8 miserable years of staring at that heartbeat, you know when it sounds wrong. Unfortunately, nobody cares what you know. To the senior engineers, you are just the night operator, the man who fills out logs, the man who resets alarms, the man who calls someone important when something actually matters. Your supervisor, Harris, barely looks at you when he talks. He is a thick-necked, dead-eyed company man who treats procedure manuals like holy scripture, not because he respects safety, but because procedures protect his career. Every time you raise a concern, he gives you the same tired look, the look that says, "Do not make my night harder." So, you learn to stay quiet, you learn to watch the gauges, you learn to drink your burnt coffee, you learn to keep your doubts locked behind your teeth. Until one freezing night, just after 2:17 a.m., one tiny number on the main cooling display begins to crawl upward. At first, it is almost nothing, a minor temperature fluctuation in one of the primary coolant loops, the kind of harmless little twitch that happens in old plants all the time, the kind of thing a lazy operator would ignore without even blinking. But you do blink. You lean forward in your chair, the cheap vinyl cracking beneath you, and stare at the reading. It climbs by 1 decimal, then another, then another. Deep down, your survival instincts whisper that something is wrong. Not catastrophically wrong, not yet, but wrong in that quiet, cold way that makes the hairs on the back of your neck rise before your brain fully understands why. You call it out to Harris. He does not even turn around. He just tells you it is probably sensor drift, a bad instrument, a tired gauge, a harmless ghost in an aging machine. You want to believe him. You desperately want to believe him, because believing him means this is just another boring night shift. Believing him means you get to finish your coffee, sign the logbook, drive home under the gray morning sky, and sleep until your next miserable shift begins. So you swallow the sick feeling in your stomach. You mark the reading in the log, and for the first time that night, you lie to yourself. You tell yourself you are not ignoring danger. You are just following the chain of command. For the next 20 minutes, the control room returns to its usual dead silence. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead. The ventilation system breathes stale, warm air across your face. Somewhere behind the walls, massive pumps continue their endless mechanical rhythm, pushing water through the hidden heart of the reactor. Then the second alarm hits. A sharp electronic chirp slices through the room. Not loud, not dramatic, just one small warning light blinking amber on the auxiliary cooling panel. You feel your chest tighten. Harris mutters something under his breath and walks over slowly, annoyed that the plant has dared to interrupt his paperwork. He taps the screen, frowns, taps it again. The backup coolant pump is showing delayed response. Not failed, delayed. That one word feels worse. Failure is simple. Failure announces itself. Failure gives everyone permission to panic. Delay is slippery. Delay gives cowards room to explain it away. Harris tells you to reset the alarm and monitor the system. You hesitate for half a second too long. He finally looks at you. His face hardens. So you press the reset. The amber light disappears. For 7 seconds, the control room is calm. Then it comes back. This time, it is joined by another, and another. 3 amber lights now blink in a neat, terrifying row. The room suddenly feels smaller. You check the coolant temperature again. Still climbing. Slowly. Patiently. Like the reactor is not exploding, not failing, not screaming. Just quietly warning you that it is running out of time. You tell Harris that the readings are connected. He snaps at you before you can finish the sentence. He says you are overreacting. He says old systems throw noisy signals. He says the plant has survived worse than a few blinking lights at 2 in the morning, but his voice is too sharp. His eyes linger too long on the numbers. He sees it too. He just does not want to be the man who wakes up the entire emergency chain over what might still be nothing, because shutting down a nuclear reactor is not like turning off a car. A shutdown costs money. A forced shutdown costs more. A false alarm means investigations, paperwork, angry executives, regulatory questions, and the kind of attention that ruins comfortable careers. So Harris chooses the most dangerous option in any disaster. He waits. And because you are still just a night shift nobody, you wait with him. Another 10 minutes pass. Then the plant shudders. It is not violent, not yet, just a deep, metallic tremor rolling up through the floor and into your legs. The kind of vibration you feel more than hear, like something enormous has shifted its weight in the dark. Every conversation in the control room dies instantly. Even Harris freezes. Then the main pressure alarm erupts. Not amber, red. A brutal, screaming red light floods the panel. Your blood runs cold. The pressure inside part of the cooling system is rising faster than it should. The reactor is still operating, still producing heat, still demanding water, still expecting the entire old, exhausted plant to keep up with it. You call the senior engineer. No answer. You call again. Still nothing. You call the on-duty plant manager. A sleepy voice finally answers, thick with irritation, asking why the hell you are calling this early. You explain the temperature rise, the pump delay, the pressure alarm, the repeated resets, the vibration. For a few seconds, there is silence on the line. Then he tells you not to initiate a full emergency shutdown until he arrives. Your hand tightens around the phone. You ask him to repeat that. He does. Do not initiate a full emergency shutdown. Monitor and stabilize. Those 2 words are supposed to sound professional, but in your ears, they sound like a death sentence wearing a tie. You hang up slowly. Harris stares at you. For the first time in 8 years, he does not look annoyed. He looks afraid. And in that moment, you realize something horrifying. The people above you do not know what is happening. The people below you are waiting for orders, and the machine behind the wall is no longer waiting for anyone. This is no longer a bad sensor. This is no longer a harmless fluctuation. This is no longer another miserable night shift. The reactor is beginning to fight for its life. You order a technician to verify the pump room locally. Harris turns toward you, furious, ready to remind you exactly where you stand in the hierarchy. But before he can speak, another alarm screams, then another, then 5 more. The control room transforms from a sleepy office into a nightmare of flashing lights, ringing phones, overlapping voices, and terrified faces glowing red under emergency indicators. The technician reports back over the radio. His voice is broken by static. The pump is running, but not properly. The vibration is worse near the feed line. There is heat where there should not be heat. Steam is forming around a valve housing. Then the radio crackles. The technician curses, and the line goes dead. For 1 suffocating second, nobody moves. Then you do something you have never done before. You step around Harris and take the main console. You order a partial power reduction. Your voice comes out louder than expected, clearer than expected. The junior operator beside you looks at Harris for confirmation. Harris says nothing, so the junior operator follows your command. Control rods begin moving into position, sliding down to calm the reaction, to choke the invisible atomic fire before it grows stronger. You watch the indicator lights. 1 row responds, then another. Then 1 section hesitates. Your stomach drops. You order the sequence again. The delayed section moves, but not smoothly, not cleanly. The reactor power begins to decrease, but slower than it should. Too slow. The plant manager finally bursts into the control room, wearing a half-buttoned shirt and a hard hat tilted slightly off-center. Behind him comes the senior engineer, a pale, thin man with expensive glasses and the shaken expression of someone whose expertise has just been dragged out of bed. They storm in expecting to take control, but when they see the panel, both of them stop. The temperature curve is still rising, the pressure is still unstable, the backup pump is still unreliable, and 1 control rod bank is still responding like a dying limb. The senior engineer looks at the screen, then at Harris, then at you. For the first time in your entire career, one of the important men looks directly into your eyes and asks what you think. Something strange happens inside your exhausted mind. Fear is still there. Of course it is. It is crawling under your skin, drying your mouth, tightening your throat, making every breath feel too small. But beneath the fear, something else wakes up, a sharp, dangerous pride. Because after 8 years of being ignored, the entire room is finally waiting for you. You point to the cooling loop. You explain that the pump issue is not isolated. You explain that the pressure rise, temperature creep, vibration, and control delay are all feeding into the same unstable pattern. The senior engineer does not interrupt. Harris does not mock you. The plant manager does not tell you to calm down. They listen, and that is when your old life ends. You are no longer just the tired man logging numbers in the corner. You are no longer the invisible night shift operator. You are the only person in the room who noticed the reactor getting sick before it started screaming. The plant manager authorizes emergency action. Suddenly, everyone moves. Phones ring, doors slam, radios crackle. Emergency teams are called in. Security begins clearing non-essential personnel. Technicians sprint through concrete corridors under cold fluorescent lights. You order additional cooling support. For a few precious minutes, it works. The temperature slows. The pressure curve begins to flatten. A thin wave of relief passes through the control room. Someone whispers that you caught it early. Someone else says the plant might stabilize. Harris, the same man who treated you like a nuisance for years, places one trembling hand on the back of your chair and tells you to keep going. And for one stupid, beautiful moment, you believe you have beaten it. You believe the machine listened. You believe your miserable years inside this concrete maze finally meant something. But your fragile victory lasts less than 3 minutes. A deep boom echoes from somewhere below. Not an explosion, not exactly. More like a massive metal door being slammed by the fist of a giant. The control room lights flicker. Every screen glitches at once. Then the emergency cooling alarm explodes across the board. The backup system you were depending on has partially failed. Your relief turns to ice. The senior engineer rushes to the panel, his hands moving quickly now. Too quickly. He starts giving orders, but his voice is cracking. The plant manager demands options. Harris keeps repeating that this should not be happening, as if the reactor might apologize and correct itself. But the reactor does not care what should be happening. The reactor only cares about heat. And right now, heat is winning. Steam pressure rises again. Radiation monitors in one section begin showing abnormal readings. Not catastrophic, not yet, but enough to make everyone in the room go silent. Radiation is different from every other danger. Fire glows, water floods, metal breaks, smoke chokes the air. Radiation does nothing. It does not roar. It does not burn your skin immediately. It does not announce itself like a monster from a nightmare. It simply exists, invisible, patient, poisonous. You stare at the monitor, and for the first time that night, you understand the true shape of the disaster. The plant is no longer trying to avoid an emergency. The emergency is already here. Now you are trying to keep it from becoming history. The evacuation siren begins outside, low at first, then louder. A terrible rising wail rolling across the sleeping town beyond the fence. Thousands of people are still in their beds, children curled under blankets, nurses on night shift at the hospital, truck drivers at the fuel station, families in small houses with no idea that men in a concrete room are fighting to keep poison out of the sky. Your hands hover over the console. You ask for permission to trigger the next containment protocol. The plant manager hesitates. Still, even now, even with red lights flashing across his face, even with alarms screaming in his ears, even with the reactor dragging everyone toward the edge, he hesitates. Because that decision cannot be hidden. That decision means national headlines. Regulatory disaster, political panic, billions in losses, careers ruined, executives exposed. You stare at him in disbelief. Then the senior engineer says your name. Quietly, he says you are right. The room turns toward the plant manager. For one unbearable second, his ego fights the truth. Then he nods. You trigger the protocol. Heavy containment doors begin sealing across the facility. Emergency ventilation routes shift. Internal teams are ordered back. Non-essential workers run through concrete corridors as warning strobes paint everything in violent red pulses. But 2 technicians are still near the auxiliary pump room. One of them is the young man you sent earlier. The radio catches his panicked voice. They are trapped behind a jammed access door. Steam is building in the corridor. Radiation is climbing. Security says there is no safe route. The plant manager says they have to leave them. The words hit the control room like a gunshot. You turn slowly. The plant manager will not look at you. He repeats himself, colder this time. He says the reactor comes first. He is not wrong. That is the horrifying part. In a normal world, saving 2 men would be obvious. In this world, with the reactor unstable and the entire town at risk, everything becomes math written in human blood. 2 men in a corridor, thousands outside the fence, a dying reactor behind concrete walls, and you in the middle, deciding which nightmare gets to happen. Your throat tightens. You look at the pump display, then at the access map, then at the manual override route. There is one way to reach the jammed section, a maintenance passage leading through an older service corridor beneath the turbine hall. It is not meant for emergencies. It is narrow, hot, poorly lit, and dangerously close to the affected systems. Harris says, absolutely not. The senior engineer says the dose could be lethal if the readings worsen. The plant manager tells security to keep the area sealed, but you are already standing. You grab a dosimeter from the emergency cabinet. You pull on protective gear with trembling hands. Harris blocks the door. For the first time all night, his eyes are not cruel or dismissive. They are desperate. He tells you that you are not a rescue worker. You are not a firefighter. You are not trained for this. You look past him at the control panel, at the numbers still climbing, at the reactor still burning through every second you waste. Then you tell him the truth. You are the only one who knows the old passage, because years ago, when nobody respected you enough to give you real authority, they still made you inspect every forgotten corner of this dying plant. The useless nobody knows the way. Harris steps aside, the door opens, and the control room disappears behind you. The corridor outside is a different world. Hot, loud, metallic. Emergency lights flash across concrete walls. Pipes groan overhead. Somewhere deep inside the facility, steam screams through a relief line with the sound of a wounded animal. Your boots pound against the grated floor. Your radio crackles with overlapping voices from the control room. The dosimeter on your chest begins clicking softly. Each click feels like a finger tapping on your coffin. You push deeper into the plant, past locked cabinets, past yellow warning signs, past doors you have opened 100 times during boring inspections, never once imagining you might run through them during the worst night of your life. The maintenance passage is worse than you remember. Narrow, suffocating, miserably hot. Your shoulder scrapes against the wall. Sweat pours down your back. Your breath fogs the inside of your face shield. The stale air tastes like metal and burnt plastic. Halfway through, the radio signal weakens. Harris becomes a broken voice in your ear, then static, then nothing. You are alone. Behind you is the control room. Ahead of you are two trapped men. Around you is a concrete maze wrapped around a dying reactor. For one terrible moment, your body wants to quit. Every instinct screams at you to turn around, to run back to the safe room, to let someone else become brave, to let the official heroes arrive too late and take responsibility for the bodies. But then you remember every year you spent being invisible, every report ignored, every warning dismissed, every time someone above you treated your knowledge like background noise, and something hardens inside you. You keep moving. When you reach the jammed access door, the heat is brutal. Steam clouds the corridor ahead. The warning light above the door pulses red. On the other side, someone is banging weakly against the metal. You grab the manual release wheel. It burns through your glove. You twist. Nothing. You twist again, harder, your teeth clenched, your shoulders screaming. The dosimeter clicks faster. Your radio suddenly catches a faint signal. The control room is shouting, but you can barely understand the words. Something about pressure, something about time, something about getting out now. You ignore it. You throw your full weight into the wheel. The mechanism finally shrieks. The door cracks open. A burst of scorching air slams into your face shield. The two technicians stumble out, coughing, terrified, half blind with panic. One of them collapses against you. The young one. His face is pale. His lips tremble. He keeps saying he thought he was dead. You drag him upright and shove both men toward the passage. You tell them to run. They do. But before you can follow, the radio clears for one sharp second. The senior engineer's voice cuts through the static. The reactor is spiking again. The emergency cooling flow is unstable, and the manual isolation valve near your corridor is still open. Your heart stops. You look down the side passage. You know exactly which valve he means. An old, heavy, miserable piece of machinery sitting behind another service door less than 30 meters away. If it stays open, the unstable flow could keep feeding the wrong section of the system. If it closes, the control room might regain enough command to stabilize the reactor. Might. That tiny word almost breaks you. You ask how long before the route becomes unsafe. No one answers. That is your answer. The two rescued technicians are already disappearing into the maintenance passage. You can still follow them. You can still survive. You can still return to the control room, covered in sweat and fear, and let someone else decide what happens next. Then the reactor trembles again. The whole corridor groans. Dust falls from the ceiling. And suddenly, you understand the cruel joke of your entire life. For years, you wanted the plant to see you. Now it finally does. You turn toward the valve room. Inside, the heat is almost unbearable. The air is thick and wet. The emergency light flickers like a dying heartbeat. Pipes run along the walls like veins around the room, all of them shaking under brutal pressure. The valve wheel is massive, old steel, stubborn, half-rusted from years of neglect. You grab it with both hands and pull. It does not move. You pull again. Nothing. Your dosimeter screams now. Not clicks, not warnings. A continuous, vicious tone. Your body understands before your mind does. You are standing in a place no human being is supposed to stand this long. The control room is shouting in your ear. Harris is begging you to leave. The senior engineer is telling you the valve has to close. The plant manager is silent. You plant one boot against the base, grip the wheel, and throw every ounce of strength you have left into it. Slowly, Horribly, the wheel begins to turn. 1 inch, then another. Your arms burn. Your vision blurs. Sweat floods your eyes. Your lungs feel too small inside your chest. The machine fights you like it is alive. But this is your plant. Your miserable, aging, ignored, concrete monster of a plant. You know its stubborn valves. You know its weak pumps. You know its lying gauges. You know every strange sound it makes in the dark. And for the first time all night, you are not afraid of it. You are furious. With a final, brutal scream, you force the wheel shut. The pipes shudder. The floor kicks beneath your feet. For one terrifying second, you think you made everything worse. Then Harris's voice erupts through the radio. The flow is stabilizing. Pressure is dropping. The reactor is responding. The control room explodes with voices, but you barely hear them. You slide down against the wall, your legs finally giving out beneath you. The emergency light flashes over your face. Red, dark, red, dark. Your dosimeter continues its merciless tone. Harris screams your name. You try to answer, but your mouth is dry, and the air tastes like metal. Somewhere far above you, beyond the concrete, beyond the fences, beyond the sirens and emergency vehicles, the sleeping city begins to wake up. People step outside in bathrobes. Parents lift children into cars. Police block roads. News helicopters turn toward the horizon. None of them know your face. None of them know your name. They do not know about the burnt coffee on your desk, or the logbook still open beside your chair, or the tiny temperature reading you noticed before anyone else cared. They only know that the sirens are fading, the plant is still standing, the sky is still clear. Hours later, rescue crews find you slumped beside the manual valve in the lower service room, barely conscious, breathing, alive, but changed forever.